play some coverage behind it, they decimated that style of defense because they were too good.
Yeah.
They were just too good. You had to overwhelm their protection to get a free rusher in Mac's face immediately.
Absolutely.
And disrupt the timing of the offense, and they never really did that. Maybe one time it looked like it was kind of an auto blitz on a motion, and he engaged into a blitz, and then Browning knocked the fumble loose, and Ohio State got the score. But that was really the only time Mac had any pressure. And by the way, that was a bootleg. That's not really a protection. He's just kind of booting out, and they put a guy in his face. So I thought that the scheme was insufficient for Alabama's offense last night for Ohio State. And then their players, with the issues that they had with COVID and with injuries, they just weren't good enough last night to beat them.
How do you evaluate Mac Jones? He's living the opposite of the NFL reality.
Yeah.
Always plays with a lead.
Yeah.
I'm throwing on 3rd and 1.
It's so interesting that you bring this up.
Receivers are wide. I mean, it's like, it reminded me of Danny Werfel, although he's a much better prospect than Danny Werfel. But Danny Werfel came out of college. Everybody's like, oh, he's unbelievable. And I'm like, no, they're going 4 wide. The SEC hasn't caught up to it. And his receivers, he's doing lollipop throws up the sideline. There's nobody close. How do you evaluate him?
Well, it's so interesting because you bring up Werfel. You know who I was having this conversation with last night on our watch party? We had our big digital watch party. He jumped in the 4th quarter, and we had this conversation with Matt Leinart, who lived very much this style of existence in college. And Matt was very candid last night in talking about the awakening, the eye-opening difference when he got to the league and the margin of talent was then closed, right? The margin of talent that Mac Jones had, even last night in the national championship game, was substantial.
Look at this. Linebacker on Devontae Smith. Not close.
I feel terrible for Tough Borland there. That was just a regular zone. Everyone's like, why would you put Borland in coverage on Devontae Smith? They weren't trying to. It was just a zone defense. He happened to be the middle linebacker, and Devontae Smith is the inside of the 3 receivers. Having said that, though, Jones was not pressured all that much. So you ask, how do I evaluate? Well, that's certainly part of the evaluation. You have to take that into consideration, the margin of player that he was playing with as opposed to the opposition. Now, having said that, Colin, there are some things that translate for Mac. He plays with a great understanding of the game. You can tell that he has complete control over his game plan. He understands where the defense is. You know that because his eyes are decisive, his feet are decisive, and he throws the football on time and on target. Right. Those are things that translate, right? I mean, he's an anticipatory thrower. He throws with great touch. He doesn't have the best arm in the world, but he tends to put the ball in great spots. And when you look at the fact that they had a yak, yards after catch, of 2nd in the country, over 2,000 yards, part of that is the timing and ball placement of the quarterback. The equation for yak, and this goes back to Bill Walsh, by the way. He used to draw this equation up for Rice and Montana and these guys. He said timing plus ball placement equals yards after the catch. That was their equation in the West Coast offense. Well, Mac Jones is responsible for 2 of those, right? And there's some spacing issues for the wide receivers, but for 2 of those variables in the equation, that's the quarterback's responsibility. And Mac Jones is really good at those 2 elements.
All right. Yeah.
I think he's a first-round player.
All right.
I won't be shocked if New England takes him.
Well, they don't have any skill players, so good luck with that. Good luck throwing into a window that's the size of a walnut.
I fully hear that, and I think that has to be taken into consideration.
And people say, oh, you didn't like Burrow. No. I said Burrow was Tony Romo. Tony Romo's a great player in the NFL. I said...
he's better than Romo.
Yeah, no, I admit that now. No, okay. He is. But that was my comp. My comp is... a less athletic Kirk Cousins?
No, Mac is Tony Romo. Burrow's better than Romo. I think Mac Jones is a Tony Romo.
He's not as athletic as...
Yeah, he's just a poor man's Burrow. Just a poor man's Burrow.
He's a homeless man's Burrow. There's no way he's a poor man's Burrow.
I mean,
Joe Burrow is a really active athlete. Really active athlete.
I understand that.
Mac Jones looks...
I didn't say he is Joe Burrow. You're getting all bent out of shape. Mac Jones... Listen,
Joe Burrow's my friend. Watch out. He was on the show this week. We are tight.
And he doesn't wear a backwards hat either.
All right. I don't want to attack Mac Jones. He could be a wonderful person.
He'll be a first-round player.
No, I'm not doubting that. He just looks a little trunky and a little inactive and not real.
Timing plus ball placement equals yards after the catch.
Oh, yakety
Is the ball on time and on target?
All right, let me move to this one.
Go.
Okay. 14 of the last 15 national champions are from the South.
Yeah.
Okay. And
the SEC is dominant.
Okay, so I just want to throw this at you. I want to throw this at you. The media, we are governed by the FCC, the governing body. Drugs, food, governed by the FDA. Wall Street, our 401k, governed by the SEC, ironically. Pro football, a commissioner, rules, good teams, tougher schedule, bad draft picks. College football, unlike pro sports, has no interest in making it competitive.
It's true.
And everything in America, people are complaining now that tech doesn't have a governing, ruling body. And by the way, some of those complaints are very realistic on Facebook, and nothing against them, but those are real complaints that they can just say you can't be on our accounts, right? So I look at college football and I think it's a $10 billion annual industry. There's no CEO. The schedules are total. I went, listen to this. Listen, I went to this morning. This guy does his homework. Next year, Alabama plays something called Mercer, New Mexico State, Southern Miss, and by the way, they get buys right before Auburn. It's like,
yes,
come on, we got to have somebody make a schedule.
You're preaching to the choir here. I have said several times on this show that college football behaves exactly like our country behaved after the Revolutionary War and before the Constitutional Convention. Okay, before we actually had a federal government,
right?
We were just 13 colonies behaving however they wanted to. Some would adhere to international law, others weren't. And what were they doing? They were behaving in their own self-interest. Well, we have 5 Power 5 conferences that behave and act in their own self-interest. And what's hard in football, as opposed to maybe even college basketball, is that the playoff is owned by the conferences. So that means, guess who the most powerful people in the sport are? The 5 Power 5 commissioners.
And by the way, and 2 of them, one of them, the SEC, has the most power.
Yes.
Because they have the most television revenue and the most draw.
Not only that, but Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, is going to have even more power now because of the way that they were able to play through this fall.
Yes.
You know, Larry Scott and Kevin Warren are going to lose a lot of any equity that they had within the sport, if they had much at all to begin with. They're the Big Ten and the Pac-12. And then the other guy that's going to carry a lot of weight is Bob Bowlesby in the Big 12 because of how he handled everything this fall. But getting back to the point, they have no incentive to change.
That's right.
Now, having said that, the SEC is starting to get so dominant that you're starting to see some of the other commissioners coalesce and start to say, hey, you know what? This is actually not good because this is not the Power 5. This is just like we're just continuing to prop up the SEC.
It's the Power 1.
It's the Power 1. You're exactly right. With a couple of schools that can sometimes compete with that conference.
Kind of.
In ACC and Clemson and Ohio State.
I love the sport, but listen, this is how UFC caught up to boxing.
I agree.
Dana White, a centralized voice.
Here's the problem. Let me give you an analogy. Let me just create a scenario.
Okay.
Let's paint a scenario.
All right.
Okay. My biggest issue with college football is the burden of proof. Okay, you might be wondering, just bear with me for a second. We have 2 standards of burden of proof in our country: criminal cases and civil cases.
Right.
One is beyond a reasonable doubt in a criminal case, and one is the preponderance of the evidence. If you don't know what that means, that basically means like if there's a greater than 50% chance, then you can get a ruling in a civil case.
Yeah.
So those are 2 different burdens of proof. Well, the top of college football right now has a lower burden of proof. It's like a civil case. It's like the preponderance of the. Do we think Alabama is one of the 4 best? Yeah, probably. So guess what? They don't necessarily have to win their division. They don't have to win every single game.
And they can schedule 3 cupcakes.
And it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter.
Now, I would say in Alabama's case, and I've defended the SEC for years on this, I think there's more great high school football players and programs in the footprint of the South.
Yes.
And so I think just like everything else.
And
like
Texas.
So the same people. A Southern football fan will hear us today and say, why should we balance it out? And I would say this. Our federal government every year sends Kentucky $9 billion because the state can't live without it. New York,